Oh, hi everybody. I just landed at Heathrow Airport in London. I slept on the plane. I managed to find a shower here at the airport, so I'm slightly fresher. I'm fresh as a daisy, no problem, 3 hours of sleep. I'm now gonna make my way to the Royal Courts of Justice, and at 10:30 a.m., Tommy Robinson will have his case heard before Justice Martin Chamberlain. I did a little bit of Googling and I liked what I saw. I saw that he said in an interview with the Times newspaper that he thinks the United Kingdom should have a more robust freedom of speech. He actually said he'd like something like the US First Amendment. Now, whether or not he puts that into practice for our friend Tommy, we'll find out later this morning. I am outside the beautiful Royal Courts of Justice in London. What a gorgeous building. I'll tilt the camera down so you can see it. There's a crowd of people outside. There's always something cooking here. I said hello to a couple of Tommy Robinson supporters. His case will be heard in about an hour's time. Justice Martin Chamberlain presiding, and Tommy will have a legal team led by the King's Counsel barrister named Alistair Williams, who's excellent. I've had a chance to talk to him a little bit over the course of the last few months. And more importantly, he gets along well with Tommy and was successful for Tommy in defeating the Metropolitan Police ban on Tommy even entering the City of London. What a bizarre punishment that was. I won't get into that now, but I think it goes to the fact that there is lawfare against Tommy Robinson being waged by the government. One of Tommy's books is called Enemy of the State. It's his autobiography, and it really is the truth. It'll be interesting to see what mainstream media attend. They typically come to Tommy's court cases, and they don't like me much because they take a very hostile point of view. I think most mainstream media journalists in the UK despise Tommy Robinson for political reasons, for reasons of class, for reasons of peer pressure. But more than just individual journalists, I don't think that there's any mainstream newspapers or broadcasters who would even allow a journalist to be neutral. I think the only exception would be there's a number of people at GB News who give him a fair hearing. But I mean, the BBC is atrocious. They're just character assassins. That's one of the reasons I believe it's important I come over here from Canada, is I just don't trust the mainstream media in this country, GB News being an exception. Anyways, I'm going to go in now. So what was today? Today was a sort of a scheduling hearing. It was a case management hearing, as we call it in Canada, where Tommy Robinson's lawyers were trying to convince a judge to hear a challenge to Tommy's imprisonment status, to hear it on an expedited basis. What I mean by that is justice moves slowly. It takes months to get court dates. But that doesn't work if someone's in solitary confinement where every day counts. So today is a special hearing to convince a judge, his name is Justice Martin Chamberlain, that Tommy has a sufficiently important case, that's sufficiently urgent, that the actual substantive hearing should be done on a speedy basis. So today isn't the resolution of the actual question, should Tommy be taken out of solitary confinement? Today is a resolution of a preliminary question. Is that a sufficiently urgent matter for the court to move faster than it normally does? Now, the fact that they scheduled today's hearing fairly quickly in itself is a good sign. I did a little bit of Googling on Justice Martin Chamberlain, and he once told the Times of London that he thinks the UK should have US-style freedom of speech, like the First Amendment. That would be amazing. I wish Canada had that too. So any judge who says that, well, I'm feeling good about him. And there's a UK eco-extremist group called Extinction Rebellion. They're awful. Not only do they block highways, they deface priceless art. They're the worst people in the world. But this judge, in a ruling, I'm going from memory here, so my details might not be perfect, defended the right of Extinction Rebellion to have some of their protests. And again, I despise Extinction Rebellion, but the fact that this judge is fighting for their freedom to protest, again, perhaps that redounds to Tommy's benefit in this hearing. So Tommy's King's Counsel, that's a senior barrister, Alistair Williamson, was on his feet, basically going through the facts of Tommy's incarceration. And the main piece of evidence he was referring to was a medical report by, I'm not sure if it was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, forgive me, who met with Tommy in prison and spent some time diagnosing him, talking to him, asking him questions about a number of things, and then wrote a scientific medical report on Tommy's PTSD and ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder and attention deficit disorder, both of which were exacerbated by his last stay in solitary confinement, which have sort of flourished again in this stay. So it's a very acute warning of Tommy's mental health. On his feet in reply, the KC for the government, the Secretary of State is the particular office, but it was just a King's Counsel lawyer, argued that, it's not really solitary confinement because Tommy has the occasional visitor and he has the occasional phone call and he's allowed to do arts and crafts or something, they said. He was basically saying, tough luck. There was one instance where Tommy was offered drugs by the health officers at the prison. Oh, you're having a tough time in solitary for 9 months? We can get you on drugs. Like, could you imagine that? Anyways, it went back and forth. And I should say that Tommy Robinson was joining not in person, but by a video link. So Tommy was in the prison. We could all see him. He could see us, and he could hear the proceedings. And he was listening to Mr. Cross, that's the government's lawyer, talk about how wonderful Tommy has, and he has this many visits and this many phone calls, and it's just a luxury vacation compared. It's better even than other prisoners have, was at one point a contention by the government. And Tommy started waving his arm madly, and the judge took notice of that. And the judge, being no dummy, said, "Oh, he clearly objects to that." And the judge said, "Well, maybe we should take a break and let Tommy have a phone call with his lawyer." Tommy's not going to come and give evidence, but maybe Tommy can give some information to his lawyer, who would then perhaps rebut or refute Mr. Cross. So the court went on a half-hour break while the lawyers talked to Tommy on the phone. But then Tommy came back to the room through his video link, and he held up a sign saying they cut off my phone. And indeed, that was confirmed by Alistair Williamson, Tommy's lawyer. So the judge was not happy with this at all. The judge inquired and said, "Are you serious? The prison cut off the phone call between Tommy and his lawyer when I instructed the lawyer to talk to Tommy?" In effect, the prison cut off the call to the judge, didn't they? The judge was not on the call, but the judge instructed Tommy and Tommy's lawyer to brief themselves so that the hearing could proceed. The prison scotched that. The prison scuppered that. The judge was not pleased. The judge said to the government's lawyer, Mr. Cross, "You get on the phone and you tell the prison that they must reconnect Tommy." And then after some back and forth, they realized that having a video link, that would just save time. Tommy would speak directly through the video link and everyone else would clear the court. So in fact, that's why I'm on the street right now. But understand what happened. For the whole morning, Tommy's lawyer was saying how oppressive the treatment in the prison was. And for the whole morning, the government's lawyer was saying, "No, it's wonderful. Tommy has so many privileges." And then, as if to prove the whole point, the prison cut off Tommy mid-phone call to his own lawyers, not even just a family or a friend, but to his own lawyers. He was instructing, this judge is not an emotionally expressive judge. He would probably be called stone-faced, but you could hear his anger. And the instructions he gave Mr. Cross, the government's lawyer, were quite stern. And I would say that the lesson the judge learned firsthand about the truth-telling and reliability of this prison, well, he learned more from that phone call being cut off than from anything the lawyers said all day. It is my view, based on my firsthand experience with the prison, they gave me one visit with Tommy and then they canceled the next one on very short notice. It is my view that the prison warden, or governor as they're called over here, Nicola Marfleet, is a sadistic woman. She's obviously a DEI hire. In the UK, the prisons are out of control. That's what's so fascinating, is that everyone on both the government side and Tommy's side assume that it's normal that prisons are extremely dangerous and that you get killed or injured in prison because of the gangs. That's just accepted as normal. In other words, Nicola Marfleet, the sadistic governor of Woodhill Prison, she's not in control of the prison. The gangs are. And her lawyer more or less said that. That's why they're putting Tommy in solitary confinement, because the prison doesn't control anything. Tommy would be killed in moments by the gangs, the largest of which, of course, is the Muslim gang. And of course, they don't like Tommy because he's a critic of Islam. So it was sort of fascinating to me that everyone involved, the judge, both lawyers, just everyone accepts that the UK prisons are literally out of control and no one manages them. So it's quite something that Nicola Marfleet, the sadistic governor who rules over this failed state of a prison, I think the judge got a measure of what she's like. Anyways, I'm on the break right now where Tommy is speaking to his lawyer. I'm going to make my way back into court. There are, I think, about 4 or 5 mainstream media journalists there. I have not seen their coverage, but I think we can surmise it's going to be the same as it ever was, which is they hate Tommy. They're going to spin things as hard as they can. I'm sure if you read my tweets and compare them to The Guardian or the BBC or whoever else was there today, you'll think we attended 2 different hearings altogether. Anyways, I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic because, again, today's ruling, which we're expecting to get in about an hour, will not be on the substance of is Tommy being abused, but it'll be on the procedural question, is there enough here to warrant a speedy trial? And, you know, maybe I'm a fool to be optimistic, but I think the judge might just agree to that. Well, hi, everybody. It's my final installment on the day. As you can see, I'm in a vehicle leaving central London on my way to the airport. I just don't have time to record something outside the court because I don't want to miss my flight, and London traffic can be extremely slow. Anyways, when I last gave an update, we were on an hour break while the judge had Tommy's lawyer and Tommy connect via video link because Tommy had objected to some of the representations made by the government's lawyer. Now, Tommy and Tommy's lawyer were supposed to have done that earlier by phone when, shockingly, the prison just cut off their phone call mid-call. And what's so astonishing about that is that's the very point that Tommy's lawyers were trying to make at that moment to the judge, that Tommy was not being treated with the regular privileges of even a criminal prisoner, let alone a civil prisoner. So the judge himself tasted firsthand the capricious and abusive, if I may, misconduct of the prison. It certainly was a terrible look for the government lawyers, and the judge, whilst never out of control of his emotions, he's a very sober-minded judge. You could tell that he was quite angry with what had happened. So that delayed everything by a significant amount of time. Tommy's lawyer, once briefed, mentioned some points to the judge who listened to him, but it was not very much more time in court. The judge announced he was, instead of issuing his ruling today, as he had originally planned to do, he's going to do that tomorrow. And I just can't stick around in London another day, I'm afraid. But the judge said he's going to release the ruling tomorrow by email. So it's not like there would be a court to go to anyways. And I talked to Alistair Williamson, Tommy's barrister, and asked him if he could send me the results as soon as he got them. So in conclusion, it was a very interesting hearing. I'm optimistic. I think Tommy had a fairly solid case to begin with. I think that it's fairly easy for a judge to say, yeah, we'll have an expedited hearing, because that's not taking a position on the merits of the case. It's just saying, if we're going to talk about this, we may as well do it while Tommy's still in prison, otherwise it's moot. And I think the way that the prison cut off Tommy's phone call, I think it lent credence to Tommy's lawyer's claims that he had not, in fact, been given the privileges that a prisoner expects. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit technical, but it was actually a very exciting moment. And I just want to tell you that there was that moment when I went up to the video link and waved to Tommy, and he saw me and he waved back, and he scribbled a note on a card and held it up that said thanks, because we've been helping with the various things. So it was actually the first time I've seen Tommy in a few months, because the prison has banned me from visiting. Anyways, it's a 3-minute update. That's not too much to report, but I just wanted to close the day. In summary, tomorrow we will learn if Tommy Robinson does indeed get an expedited hearing to change his prison treatment. I hope so, and I hope this marks the end of his segregation, which is really taxing him physically and mentally. Anyhow, that's my report. I'm literally on the way to the airport. I just wanted to leave right away because I didn't want to risk missing the flight. If you can help me cover the cost of that flight, I'd be so grateful. I'm not even staying in a hotel. I'm just going straight home. But between the flight and the taxis, it's almost $1,000 Canadian, about 500 pounds British sterling. If you can help me out, go to TommyReports.com. And I probably did 200 tweets today. If you want the blow by blow, you can find that on my X account. Well, that's it from here. And I'll keep you posted tomorrow. I'll send out an email tomorrow when I hear from the judge. All right, goodbye.